What's up, YouTube? It's the Top Audio Engineer from Level Up Lab Studios, and we're back with another video. So today, I'm officially starting a new series, and this series I'm calling Squashed. Now, I'm calling it Squashed because it's all about compression. So I briefly went over compression in my last video about signal flow. So basically what a compressor does is it reduces the dynamic range of an audio signal. Now, what do I mean by that? So in an audio waveform, there's what we call peaks. Now there's small peaks and there's big peaks. And what a compressor does is it takes those big peaks and turns it down so that your signal is more even throughout your track. That's what a compressor does. Now, that's not the only reason why we use compression. We use compression to shape the tone of a signal. I shape the tone of my vocal. That's the first thing I do, is I shape the tone of my vocal, and then I worry about dynamics. I want to get the tone right first. We also do it for color. Now, color is basically just the specific artifacts and saturation that we get from using analog gear. Like, for an example, a LA2A. LA2A gives it gives your signal a lot of warmth, and that's just like that nice mid-range that we love to hear in a vocal. Now, there's 3 types of compressors that you will run into during your career as an audio engineer or producer or artist. And I'm gonna give you a little brief overview first, and then I'm gonna get into Logic. I'm gonna use Logic today, y'all. I'm gonna get into Logic and show y'all some like real world examples. But let's get into it. So the first compressor I'm going to talk about today is what's called the FET compressor, or effect compressor. Now, FET stands for field effect transistors. These are the compressors that emulate that valve tube sound using you guessed it, a transistor. FETs are famous for their fast attack settings, which are good for clamping down on peaks and transients that normally you couldn't catch with any other type of compressor. So they're good to use on kicks, snares, vocals, bass. They're good on anything. The next type of compressor is what's called the opto or optical compressor. Now, these compressors use photocell and light bulbs to determine the gain reduction or the peak reduction. Now, opto compressors have a generally slower attack time than FETs. That's why they're good for non-transient type of audio signals like vocals, bass, think guitars, things like that. And they really smooth out those peaks too. Lastly, we have a VCA. Now, a VCA stands for a voltage controlled amplifier. They're pretty similar to FETs, but they're much more cleaner. But they can sound just like FETs if you push them far enough. Now, I'll typically use a VCA on a drum bus to add glue to my drum kit. And I would typically use it on my master fader to give more glue to my mix. So they're pretty good with gluing sounds together. So now that we got that little background info out of the way, let's get into Logic right now. Let me show y'all some examples of it. So I have a session right here. I don't know where I got this from. It was just on my hard drive, so I thought I could use it as a good example to demonstrate compression today. Only thing I did was some quick gain staging and some quick level adjustments, and that's pretty much it. I left all my signals dry. There's no processing on it, and I can even show you no processing. Only thing I got is a VU meter. That's how I gain stage it. So I'm gonna go ahead and just demo compression real quick, but first I'm gonna show you like what the track sounds like as it is in its raw form. Let's take a look. So as you heard, That mix sounded pretty good. Everything sounded balanced. Nothing sounded like it was overtaking each other that much. But three things could have been added to that mix: tone, dynamic control, and some punch. So that's what I'm gonna demo today with a few compressors. Typically when I start compressing, I like to grab this FET and I like to bring out the tone. I want to shape the tone of the vocal. So let me actually demo this real quick with the 1176 emulation.
As far as I can remember, you never made a single effort to make me not feel segregated. The fact of me being different is to you just another symptom. You can accept how I'm not what you expected. You can't stand I smoke and drink, and that I'm not what you may think.
Now, I want to give props to whoever recorded this. This sounds like a well recorded vocal. I like it, but I feel like you can shape the tone a little bit more. And that's what I'm going to do in post. So, what I'm going to do is actually pull up this FET 1176 emulation stock compressor that Logic has. I think it works great. So, this is what I'm going to demo first with this vocal.
As far as I can remember, you never made a single effort to make me not feel segregated. The fact of me being different is to you just another symptom. You can accept how I'm not what you expected. You can't stand I smoke and drink, and that I'm not what you may think.
So with that minimal compression that I just did, you can hear the tone and the attitude in her voice come out a little bit more, and you can also hear that those S's are a little bit more pronounced. Not that they're too harsh to the ear, but it makes it sound like she doesn't have a lisp or something. And you could even hear it in the mix, so you could be a judge for yourself to see if it is effective.
As far as I can remember, you never made a single effort to make me not feel segregated. The fact of me being different is to you just another symptom. You can accept how I'm not what you expected.
So that was tonal compression. And I'm going to go with you step by step through the parameters of this compressor. So how I go about compression with these FET styles of compressors, before I even set my threshold, I go to my attack and release. I set my attack to a very slow attack time, and I set my release to a very fast release time, so that I'm not getting barely any compression. And then I increase my threshold until I see about a half or 1 dB of attenuation. That I'm like, okay, I'm at a good setting. Only when I'm hitting the peaks. Like I go to the loudest sections of like a vocal where I see the peaks are really hidden, and then once I see like a half a dB or a dB, I'm like, okay, this is a good starting point. And for my ratio, I try to keep it at a minimal and as also realistic to and faithful to these FETs. So I chose a 4:1, which is the lowest setting on a typical 1176. And then I look at my meters for my makeup gain. So for this, I had about a half or 1 dB of attenuation. So that's what I made up in the makeup gain section. And then I adjust my attack time so that it clamps on those peaks, but not too hard because this is just tonal compression. So now I have the tone exactly where I want it. So now we're going to try to control the dynamics. But one more time, let's just hear the vocal in the context of the mix, because you don't want to mix in solo. That's never good. So let me just play the mix one more time.
As far as I can remember, you never made a single effort to make me not feel segregated.
So the tone in her vocal is definitely there, but we can control that vocal just a little bit more. Not too much, but just give it a little bit more compression. So you can see in instances where she's like segregated, like that, the end of that segregated, it sounds like it drops off a little bit. in some instances where it seems like some words are jumping out at you, I think we can control that just a little bit more so that we don't completely suck the life out of the vocal, but we can have a little bit more control over it. And as I'm pulling up this first compressor, you can see that all the parameters are pretty much the same except for my attack and my release times. My attack time, I have a little bit more quicker so it can catch those peaks, but that it's not completely squashing those lower level signals. That's all I want to do is catch those peaks and turn them down a little bit. So let me demo what this sounds like.
As far as I can remember, you never made a single effort to make me not feel segregated.
Now that was very subtle, but it's night and day to me. You can see those peaks were clamped down a little bit, but it wasn't squashed, and that segregated, it didn't sound like it dropped off as much. So that's what we want to have is control with our vocal. And now I'm gonna show you just how much of a madman I am. I have 3 compressors in series, 2 FETs, and this one right here, my second favorite compressor. This is the La2A compressor. I got the Waves version up right now because I don't have the one from Teletronics. But this compressor will smooth out that vocal. See, what the FET does is it attenuates those peaks with its faster attack, and then you put the La2A in series with it, and then it just smooths out that vocal, gives it a more warmer feel to it. You know what? Hearing is believing. Let me just play it.
As far as I can remember, you never made a single effort to make me not feel segregated.
Now, I don't know about y'all, but that's night and day to me. You can hear those mids. What this analog emulation does is when it makes it warmer, the mids get boosted slightly. And you can see as well, there was not a lot of attenuation. It was barely jumping off of 0. But let me show you this.
As far as I can remember, you never made a single effort to make me not feel segregated.
Amazing. This La2A does its job. No wonder why it's the industry's favorite compressor. It's not my favorite, it's my second favorite, but I love it. But just so y'all don't think I'm going crazy, let me undo this and play it back for you.
As far as I can remember, you never made a single effort to make me not feel segregated.
And now let's hear it with the La2A activated.
As far as I can remember, you never made a single effort to make me not feel segregated.
Night and day, people. Night and day. This La2A is just goated. I use it on all vocals. It just works. So let me recap. So first compressor, tonal compression, shape the tone. Second compressor, dynamic control, shape those dynamics, attenuate those peaks. The third compressor, La2A, is just to smooth and add warmth. Now, if you listen back to when I was playing the song, well, the vocal in the context of the mix, you would notice that there was a build-up of like this mid-range energy from the bass drum. And that could be a real problem because sometimes those single band compressors like the FETs, and they can't catch it. So what we do is pull up a multi-band compressor. And I'm just going to show you guys what the drum kit sounds like. Now, if you're listening on studio monitors or studio headphones and you can hear that build up, it's not a lot, but it's noticeable. So let me just bring up my compressors one more time so I could demo how to fix this problem in a bass drum. So I did serial compression first, 2 compressors in series, 2 1176 emulations, which gave me actually more punch out of the mix, which I wasn't expecting, but it did. So, amen. And I used the C4 multiband compressor from Waves to really uh crunch, not crunch, but like attenuate that low mid energy so that it's consistent with the whole section of the bass drum. And just so you guys get a clearer picture, I'm gonna A and B this mix. So I'm gonna take off all the processing real quick. I'm gonna play it for you. Now that was before, and then this is after all of the compression. Very subtle but effective. That's how compression is supposed to be. So I know you guys have heard me talk about bus compression. So what I do for my drums, which mainly everybody does, is you treat the drums as one instrument instead of each individual track, like bass drum, snare, hi-hat. I treat it as one instrument. So I send them all off to an aux track via a bus. So I use the stereo bus, and then I treat it as one instrument. So I compress each individual track first, and then I pull up a master bus compressor. So in this instance, I'll use a VCA compressor by Solid State. So this is the VCA, the voltage controlled amplifier, and this does a good job with transients. That's why I used it on my master bus for my drum track. So yeah, let me demo this real quick. Now, I love Solid State Logic's VCA style compressors because they, especially on drums, they make the drum track sound like it's actually one full kit instead of each individual instrument. Like before I used this master bus compressor, it just sounded like a kick, snare, hi-hat, and some toms. But now that you glue the sound together with this compressor, it sounds like one instrument. It sounds like one track. So that's why I like this master bus compressor. One of the best bus compressors out there, honestly. SSL did a great job of designing this. And the way I go about compression with this master bus compressor is the same as I would any other compressor. I go to the slowest attack time, and I go to fairly the quickest release time, and then I set my threshold to where I'm seeing like about a half a dB or a dB of attenuation, and then I adjust my attack time. Now for this specific master bus compressor, you don't want to really clamp on peaks. If you find yourself with a faster attack time, then I suggest going back into the mix in each individual track and doing a little bit more compression, because this is mainly just to glue the sounds together. You shouldn't be getting like lots of dB of attenuation, 3 dB the most when it comes to master bus compressors. Now the last form of compression I have today is what we call a limiter. Now what a limiter does, it's a compressor but with a very high ratio, like 50-1, and sometimes infinity to 1. It's crazy. What this does is it's like a ceiling where sound will not go past that level. No matter what you do, you tell that compressor a ceiling, sound will not go past that. If you set that compressor at -1, sound will not go past -1. And you could use a limiter on pretty much anything. I wouldn't advise using it on anything, but if it works, it works. You could use it on drum buses, vocal buses, synth keys. You could use it wherever you want. But I typically use it on a drum bus just to catch peaks, and I also use it on my master fader to bring it up a little bit and control the dynamics of the whole song. So let me just demo this for you real quick.
made a single effort to make me not feel segregated.
Now, don't limit like me, limit responsibly, because that was a horrible example. But it's just a little demo to show you how it works and what it does. So basically, what you want to do, you set your output ceiling. I have mine at -1 because that's why I set mine normally on my when I'm doing mastering. I'll set it at -1 because of streaming services. I found out when if you set I used to set mine to -0.1, but they will always turn my song down. Can't stand them. Spotify got beef with you. But I turn it down to -1 now. So I sacrificed a little bit of level, but if you mix it right, you could get a very loud master. But so yeah, limiting is really just to catch peaks and turn things down, but really turning them up, if that makes sense. All right, y'all, that was all the types of compression I had for you today. I hope y'all found this very informative. You enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe, share this video around, help this channel to grow. And I'll see y'all next week